times are all cloudy. But now I like to wait for a good like 40% amber. I like that whole couch lock effect kind of thing, right? So that's what I shoot for usually. But so this is going to be like a lightweight kind of different harvest for me.
Hell yeah. Yo, Spike. Yeah, there are a few clear trichomes in that, but you gotta keep in mind that the amount of clear trichomes you're seeing are in like a 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter space because that's how zoomed in it is.
I got to get me one of those.
Azimax, Cannon Control, Grow Save. Oh,
What,
yeah, absolutely. Like, unfortunately, it's just a little too late to... Sometimes you can get it at early flower and take them out with some of these products, like you said, but sometimes it's just too far in.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to know when to cut your losses. And it's all good. You know what I'm saying? I'm not complaining. It was a good harvest. Or it's going to be a good harvest. Hell yeah.
It tastes pretty good. Just off rip, not really analyzed in it. It's very a nostalgic type smoke. It reminds me of some older strains.
Oh, those are the good ones. When you get that like nostalgia fucking high. It's so hard to find those. Hell yeah. Oh, bro, you make me jealous. I got to roll up now. You know what I'm saying? Shit.
Yeah, this is like the first joint of Alien Predator. After harvest, obviously, and cutting it, trimming it.
What's your cure time usually look like?
I mean, obviously, it'll cure the whole time you have it, right. But more often than not, it's not as long as people think. In a couple of weeks.
That was when I started growing. I started looking at like YouTube and all that, and like people drop like recommendations, like, oh yeah, you know, you shouldn't smoke until, you know, X amount of days afterwards. You know, let it cure, let it get a good cure, right? And people are sitting there like, yeah, you know, I let it sit there for like a year and cure. I'm burping the jars the whole time, or however the fuck they do it. It's like, damn, bro. It's like, as a home grower, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, 2 weeks usually you're good. Like, and that's the thing. Anything past a month, honestly, you're gonna have start degradation, and you better smoke that within a year. Otherwise, it's gonna degrade.
Yeah.
And like that's what's so great about hash and concentrates is that once you take the plant material out of it, it lasts so much longer. So like hash will last a long ass time, and dabs will last a long ass time, especially if you kept them in a mini fridge. It's just plant material doesn't really last that long. Like, best way to preserve flower, remove all oxygen from the container that the flower's in. If you can, flood the bag with nitrogen so that it replaces any oxygen. Other than that, keep it in a cool, dark environment like always, and you'll get maybe a couple of years out of flower.
Is that what they do with the cans? Like, you see like packaged, like when you go to Dispo and the weed comes in like a prepackaged can, kind of looks like tuna or some shit that you're buying, right? Is that what they do? They take all the air out and replace it with nitrogen? Oh shit. Well, that's a trip.
Just like a little off topic, but in the winter, at least in the places that get cold enough, we put nitrogen in our tires. We don't put air in our tires because the cold fucks with how full your tire is.
Oh shit.
But if it's nitrogen, the cold doesn't mess with it.
See, out here in Cali, we don't, you know what I'm saying? Put air in your tire, you're good to go. We don't get
And
snow like
you
that.
know, in the summer, you're definitely good to go. You know, just filling it up with a regular air pump. But in the winter, if you don't want to mess with it too often, you fill it with nitrogen. You go pay a little bit of monies, and they fill it with nitrogen.
Oh shit. Learn something new every day, yo. Hey, speaking about learning something new, man. So this whole switching over to 240 thing,
Mm-hmm.
like, all right. So in case y'all don't know, I switched over all my grow lights over to 240, or at least all the grow lights that could be switched over to 240. I switched from 120 to 240, and you know, as a benefit to a home grower, switching your lights over to 240 gives you more room to put shit on your circuit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily lower your electric bill. It just enables you to add more shit to your grow, right? Because the power companies are charging you,
Kilowatt.
yeah, by your watts, by how many watts you're using, right? So no matter what configuration you do, you're always going to be using the same amount of watts, right? And unless they figure out how to, you know, convert watts into something that's lower, bigger, I don't know, some way. But as of right now, you get charged per watt. So me switching from 120 to 240, I'm not going to see much of a difference on my bill. If anything, it might get higher because I told myself it was going to get lower so I could add more shit to it. So I ended up having to shut some shit down. I was way overstepping my bounds with that one. But but yeah, so like when you switch over to 240, I went ahead and when I did the remodel for this house, I knew that I was going to have a grow somewhere in this garage. I didn't know if it was going to be over here, over there, but I put an outlet over here where the grow is at now, and I pre-wired 240 volts. All right,
Okay.
and I knew that I was going to have lights on this circuit, and you know, lights are the number one thing that takes up all your amperage in a grow, right? That's your number one power stealer right there. Is your fucking lights.
Lights then
Uh,
fans.
lights and fans, right? Uh, so I wanted all my shit to be all my lights to be able to run on one circuit. So I pre-wired 240 volts. And for the longest time, I had that split um, into 120 volts for each side. So I had, you know, 120 volts wired in, and all I did was, you know, I put the 240 volts. Now it's two hots. You got your line one and your line two that comes in to your receptacle, right, from your panel. So you're taking on if you open up your sub panel or even your main panel on your electrical distribution, um, you'll have two sides, right? You got switches on each side. Each
Mm-hmm.
side is a different leg of your power that's coming into the house, right?
From
In
the street,
America,
correct? Yeah.
we have we're supplied 240 volts from the power line, right? Or from wherever your power company is distributing your power from. You have 240 volts to come into your house. From there, it switches off. There's a neutral that is brought to your panel, and it splits your current in half. So you basically now have 120 volts for your house that you run on. Here in America, I know in other places it's 240 volts naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so me switching over my lights, I knew that I was gonna end up running more. I was at the time on 120 volts, I was running 8 amps, right? And that seems like a lot, and it is, especially on a 120 volt circuit. You've got
Yeah.
all this power going through one leg, right?
It's getting to the limit of what you should do.
Yeah. So me switching over to 240 volts, it allows you to run more things because the higher the voltage you have, the less amperage you're going to pull. And wire is rated in amperage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have like 14 gauge wire, and that's rated for 15 amps, right? So naturally, you don't want to run that at a full 15, right? Because you'll end up catching something on fire. You know, something will
Yeah,
go
you
wrong.
want to always do the 80% load rule, where it's only 80% of what that wire and or power generation device can handle.
Yep, yep. And if you overload it, that's when you start having problems. You have brownouts, or if you're pulling something, like if you got a motor on there and it's constantly stopping and starting, you could have a problem with your shit catching fire, right? So so me switching over to 240 volts didn't necessarily lower my power bill, but it did allow me to put more stuff on the circuit at a safer capacity, right? So as of right now, about 1,000 amps I'm running at, or I'm sorry, 1,000 amps, 1,000 watts I'm running at about 4 amps, right? And that's on 240 volts, right? Now if I was running that same thing like I was on 120, then my amperage goes up to 8 amps, doubles, right? Doubles what I'm using right now. Really, it was more closer to 9 because I think I had more shit on the circuit. We won't talk about that though. So really, I'm pushing my bounds and I'm pushing my limits. And if you switch over to 240, you're going to split the load capacity of your lights between both of the circuits evenly. So your line 1 and your line 2 will have a more even power distribution. Whereas if you're running on 120, you're putting all that power through one leg, and that's a lot. That's a lot for your system to handle, and it unbalances your shit.
100%. And just to prove a little more, like he's talking about, he's at 1,000 watts at about 4 amps, and right now in room B, I'm at 1,900 watts and 8.6 amps.
Ooh, y'all see that goblin out here flexing, y'all?
And that's I got like 4 of the lights turned off.
See, that's my problem. Like, look, goblins. I know he doesn't.
That's my lighting, so I can see in there while I'm cleaning.
I know he doesn't flaunt it, y'all, but really, Green Goblin's a millionaire. He's like Batman in disguise, bro.
Nah. More. I don't know, what was that movie where they just go take things out of pretty much the trash and make it look like it's brand new, and like fucking
shit,
make robots and shit out of it. I'm more like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Hell yeah. Hey, I cleaned out my garage, right? And I had a whole bunch of, back in the day when the box was primitive, I had all my T5 lights that were, up in the top bay. I used them for veg, but I had all the ballasts from there that I stumbled upon, and I fucking threw them bitches out.
Get them out
I'm
of
never
here.
gonna fucking use these things again. They ran so hot.
So Guts brings up a question here. So current will reduce the amperage?
Yeah. So the higher the higher the voltage, right? The less the amperage. So like on a 120 volt circuit, say you were running 4 amps, right? Say you're running, or I'm sorry, on a 12 volt circuit, like a doorbell type circuit. Somehow, for some reason, you're running fucking, 4 amps off of there, right? Now, if you took that same circuit and you put it into a 120 volt circuit, then you would now be running that same equipment that you had plugged in at 2 amps. So you see how it cuts it in half, right? And then if you were to take that same thing and be able to put it on 240 volts, then that cuts it in half again, and now you're only running at 1 amp. And if somehow, by some magical reason, you have access to 480 volts, you can take that 1 amp and you could chop that in half. And you can now take that same thing that was once running at 4 amps down to half amp.
Okay, Red Pill Grower has a question. If 240 isn't an option, would 2 120 volt circuits with 20 amps each be sufficient for a tent? Absolutely, that would be sufficient for a tent. Especially nowadays, like we are talking about high amperage applications and whatnot, and like I have quite a few lights in my garden. But if you have a couple of tents, 2 lights, some fans, like you 100% are going to be able to run that off of a 120 volt circuit or a couple of 120 volt circuits.
Now, allegedly, look, don't do this at home, kids. Don't do this at home. Now, allegedly, I have seen somebody who has taken, they had a 240 volt drill press or some shit that he had out in his garage, right? And all he had out in the garage was 120 volts in each outlet. Well, in each outlet, allegedly, they split the garage. These days, they split the garage in 2 different circuits, right? Both of them are ran off of a ground fault circuit. And your garage is pretty much the safest place in your house to grow electrically, right? So he took an extension cord and he chopped the top on it and he split the wire, right? And he had one electrical
coming
cord
from
that
one
was coming from one circuit, and then he had another one coming from the other circuit, and he put the 2 together, and now he's got 240 volts to run his equipment at. Don't try this at home. Unless you're an electrician, you got skills, don't fucking try that at home, please. I don't want to be responsible for your house burning down.
Hey, there's a lot of sketchy stuff you can do with electricity. It doesn't mean you should do.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. But yeah, there's ways that you can manipulate and make 240 volts. But if you're trying to do just like a home grow, look, I'm telling you, you don't need anything more than just a simple 120 volt, 220 volt circuits that are on a different circuit. I'm saying on a different side. So like before I split my circuits up, I had my fans were on their own 120 volt circuit and my lights were on their own 120 volt circuit, so that it kind of was able to balance the system out. Now it wasn't perfect because obviously my lights are pulling more current than my fans are. AC Infinity has got some fucking astounding fans, and my other fans are just crap fans. But if you could split your circuits up, do that. I'm saying,
oh, absolutely,
kind of even your system out, so you're not, what I'm saying. So one day you're growing, right, and your system can only take so much, especially older houses. The last house that I lived in had 100 fucking amps at the main, and the sub panel was only rated for 80% of that. So it's like, well, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, if you could fucking figure out how to get 2 circuits in there to even your shit out, you'll have an easier time. Because say like one day your fans and your lights are on the same circuit, and your spouse goes to plug in, say, a fucking hair dryer, or it's cold, so you plug in a space heater or some shit, right? Well, bam, now your circuit breaker's gonna pop, right? And now you're gonna run out to the sub panel and be like, well, what the fuck? What happened? Why is it popping? And you're gonna flip it back on, and the same thing is gonna happen. It's a pop. And I've seen people get like pissed off and like try to like they take that circuit and they'd like, I seen some dude, he took a fucking he took a screw. Don't do this. I'm dead ass serious. Don't fucking do this. But he took a screw and he screwed his fucking switch so that it would stay on.
Oh, no, yeah.
And I was like, bro, how did you not kill yourself doing this? Like, what the fuck are you doing?
No, yeah.
So like, don't overload your circuits. That's my point.
Yeah, definitely don't overload your circuits. It's super good to be able to, load your circuits correctly at, 80% or less of the circuit, and have those, the loads split balanced, because there's a thing called power factor, and it's measured from 0 to 1, I believe.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a power factor of 1, I believe that's not a great thing. And that's from pulling too much electricity from one leg versus the other leg of the 2 legs coming into your house from the street. Now that can get kind of complicated, but basically, like B was talking about, you got 2 sections in your sub panel box there, and you got some circuit breakers on one side and you got some circuit breakers on the other, and that each side is one leg of that two legs that are coming into your house. And if you can try to get 20 or 30 amps happening on one side and 30 amps happening on the other side, your power bill will actually be lower because your power factor will be correct. And that's what the load balancing that we're talking about is if you can pull around the same amount of electricity from the left side compared to the right side, you'll have load balanced your entire house, not just your grow.
Yeah. So I got this multi. I guess you could say it's a multimeter, and it's not like a multimeter that an electrician pulls out. I got those too, but I got one that plugs in, right? So I added it into the circuit, and it measures my amperage, my voltage, my wattage. What else we got? It's got a timer on there that's useless. It only runs up to 199 hours, and I've fucking surpassed that a long time ago. But it tells you your kilowatt hours, and it tells you it also tells you your power factor too. So you can buy this thing on Amazon. It's like fucking $13. You actually have to install it, so you got to pull your circuit apart. One of these it's got an amperage meter on it, so you would have to disconnect your positive feed and put the amperage meter on there and then reconnect it. But it'll tell you all your readings, everything that you need.
So Trey Strong's out here with the biddies.
Oh, yeah. Trey Strong's.
Having active measurements are extremely great. Even if you buy the $25 kilowatt measurement thing where you plug it in, then you plug your device into it, and it tells you, hey, you're running 1,000 watts or whatever, this many amps. Having one of those around is super great just for testing equipment and being able to get some of these factors down and try to balance the load in your house. Shout out for the gift sub to Red Pill.
Oh, ballin'.
Hope you're having a great morning so far, Trey. Into the afternoon.
Yeah, I definitely recommend anybody out there getting some sort of meter to visually see what's going on. Right now, with those kilowatts, you got to be careful because those still plug into your wall and they can only take so much. Right, so a lot of the kilowatts that I was seeing were like 10 amps. They were rated up to 10 amps. There was a couple that were rated up to 15. Right, so you got to be careful in what you're looking at. Because as I'm looking at the reviews, a lot of the people are like, "Well, this fucking thing burnt up on me and it almost caught my house on fire." Like, nah, bro, what were you putting into there? Like, did you read?
Yeah, and not only that, like the kilowatt thing that you plug in and measure devices isn't meant for you to plug in and leave plugged in to constantly measure devices. It's meant for you to plug in the kilowatt hour measuring device, then plug in your device, you run it for 30 minutes while taking some measurements, and then you just plug the device into the wall after that, because you know how much it's using after that. Because you write it down and you move on to the next device, and you measure that device, and you measure the next device, and then you get a total of all the devices that you have in your garden or home if you're trying to balance out your whole home.
Yeah, this also applies to residential or commercial, whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be aimed at your grow. This can apply towards whatever circuit you have in your house.
Absolutely. And Red Pill's brought up a couple of good points. If you are, like, granted, this is all work that a certified electrician should be doing. If you do this work, you may not be insured under your homeowner's insurance, renter's insurance. So if you are going to do a lot of this panel type work, I'm just going to put out a little disclaimer. Make sure it's under a licensed electrician. But secondly, Red Pill, like I said, has come up with a good couple of points that Try to keep all your higher amperage breakers at the top of your sub panel, because that's closer to the input of where the electricity is coming from the street. And you don't want to have blank spaces in between your circuits and your circuit breaker box, because that's not safe and it's a no-no. You can accidentally reach in there and touch some stuff, and that type of electricity coming from the street is definitely the type that can hurt you badly.
It'll give you a nice little shocker. Yeah, no, definitely. If you're ever messing with a panel, please consult an electrician at the minimum. Consult an electrician. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Not your handyman. Like there's people who went to school for this shit for years, right? And that are learning about, new technologies and safe ways and safe practices and whatnot. Those guys charge that money because of what they do and the schooling that they went through, and you know what I'm saying, they know their shit. So don't hesitate, man. And what are they gonna say? No? Like, that's the worst thing that's gonna happen, bro. Like, just ask your electrician, please.
Yeah. And to be fair, some handymen are actually licensed as well. So just make sure they're licensed, all right? That's the main factor.
Make sure they got training, right? And they got all the appropriate things.
Oh, absolutely. And 100% red pill grower, you can get away with the two 120 volt circuits with the 15 to 20 amp circuits on each of those, and you'll get 100%, no problem. The big issue for us growers is we always want to grow more and more and more. So I got 6 lights in my room B, I got 5 lights in room A, and all of them are 700 plus watt lights.
Dude, see, Goblin's balling out here.
And it took me a long time to get to that point. 13, 14, 15 years. It took me a bit to get there. But that's when switching to 240 will really, really make a huge difference when you're running so many different lights. And then you got, 17 fans and all that. That's when it really helps.
Now, look, running your fans, that's not the killer, all right? The killer for your fans is starting them, right? So if you look at a motor, or if you look at your car, right, how much power does it take your car to get from 0 to 40, right? It takes quite a bit, and you end up using most of your gas to get up to that speed, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with a fan. There's an induction that fucking happens, and all this power gets pulled just to start the fan. And it goes true for any motor, right? Any electrical motor. To start it is your main current draw.
100%. So that's why they have soft start motors, and they have motors that start other motors, because some motors are hard to get going. That's what a soft start motor is.
If you have multiple fans in your garden and your power goes out for some reason, I highly recommend you go in there and turn those fans off till the power comes on, and you can turn them on, one at a time. Because if all these fans start up, you got this big inrush of current, you could run into some problems.
Especially if you're not following the 80% load rule, where if you're kind of pushing it to where your fans are on this 120 volt circuit and you got a bunch of them on there, and you're like, oh, I'm running 9 amps on a 10 amp circuit, or I'm running 12 amps on a 15 amp circuit, them all kicking on at the same time will probably just pop the circuit yet again. And that's why that 80% rule is such a prevalent thing in electronics in general.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you run, even if you're talking about small little DC electronics like your phone that uses 3.5 volts all the time and uses millivolts and milliamps of current to do its operations, even then, those calculations are taken into place, the 80% rule, because if it's going over 80%, your phone's going to start heating up. and you're not going to like that. So you got to keep it 80% or below to avoid thermal runaway, is what it's called. And that's when your wiring will start melting, start catching fire, start catching your phone on fire. There's a huge Samsung thing back in the day where notes were not doing so well.
Yeah. I remember that.
So that's why we follow that rule so religiously, per se, is because that's where the danger comes in. Anytime you overload anything, that's where the danger comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And technically, I have 2 circuits that I'm running my entire grow on. One's a 30 amp circuit, 120 volts for fans, little air pumps for my cloners and stuff, just random 120 volt stuff. And then I got 240 for all lights. And that includes my little cloner light and everything, all lights. And that's what's great about any of the newer LED lights that you get in the past 4 years. Every single one of them are cross compatible with 120 volts or 240 volts. Every single one of them.
Yeah. Speaking about lights, hold on real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you had mentioned something that like jogged my memory here real quick. I'm like, there's something else I wanted to talk about. Look, all right, so check it out. Me switching my lights over to 240 volts. All right. I told y'all that I did it, right? You know what I'm saying? Now we're balling. Now we're at optimum capacity here. And so I had bought my very first quantum boards were these cheap I can't even say the name, bro. Like Mieeclux. It's like Mieeclux. It's some Japanese company, man. I don't know what the fucking name is. But as I switched my MaxiSun PB4000s over to the 240 volts, I had no problems. They were cool, right? But I took these little 100 watt boards and I plugged them in to the 240 volts, and now they don't turn off. Right? So as I'm doing some research, circuit. Yeah, as I'm doing some research into it, I don't know if you follow this cat, but he's funny as fuck. He's as an electrician, I watch him and I laugh. His name is Electro Boom on YouTube. And he's hilarious. Anytime he touches any kind of circuit, he's always fucking shocking himself or something. But you know, the point is, he had this video come out. He released this video that he did with another cat. I don't remember what his name is, but they had got into this. They called it the zombie bulb, right? And it's this LED light that is made in China or Japan or some shit, and its circuit board for this light doesn't have. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gob. It's a capacitor.
Correct.
If it had a capacitor in it, like new lights do, or like my PB4000s, they have a capacitor in them that'll discharge any residual voltage that's left in the light, right? Or any power that's going there. So in a 240 volt circuit, you have 2 hots and a ground that comes into your light, right? Or let's just say it's your light, right? So on a switch leg, you only switch one leg. You don't switch both legs in a circuit. So you cut the power off on the one leg. Cool. There's no power going to the light.
120 is still going through it the other side.
120 is still going through the other side, and so now you got 120 volts that's powering this driver, and it's turning your light on and keeping your light on, right? So I just recently discovered this. I don't remember. I think I was talking to Goblin or something, and I opened up the box, and damn, the fucking light was on. Or I went to go spray the plants because of this fucking spider mite problem, and both the lights were still on, but they weren't on. They were just dim, right? And I know the plants can take a certain amount of light at nighttime because obviously you got moonlight natural in the wild, right? So, uh, however, these lights being as close as they were to the plants, that's when I started to worry, right? So I started going in at night and turning the fucking light off just to be sure. So when I wake up in the morning, now I got to go in there physically turn the lights on. Um, but my PB4000 didn't do that. So in digging some, doing some research into the problem, come to find out, yeah, it's these cheap drivers, right? They didn't put a capacitor, a piece that's so minutely inexpensive that any light company can do it, and now they are, right?
Yeah,
So
it literally is 0.00005 cents for them because they buy 100,000 of them, and it costs so little.
so little. They're just being lazy, cheap, inexpensive lights, looking for the easiest build, something that's cheap that I don't have to spend money on, but you know what I'm saying? So so that's my problem, right? I got these lights that won't shut off. So now I'm thinking I might have to fucking retire them because I don't want to put them back on 120 volts. That's not something that I'm really
Well,
looking into doing.
we'll order a couple of larger capacitors instead of the surface mount ones, and you can solder it in line, and it'll turn off.
Or yeah, that's another option too. If you are technically inclined, you can always, if you are having this problem, you can solder a capacitor onto the board, and that'll take care of your problem. But yeah, that I ran into that, and that fucking threw me for a loop. So if you do ever run into that problem where you switch your lights over to 240 and you get some lights that just don't shut off, that could be your problem. Also, if you have a whole bunch of wires that's just going all over the place, and wires passing, you got positive going this way, you got a positive going this way, and it's wound up, or
Mm-hmm.
however you got it, right? You can create induction. And induction, you'll basically create a ghost voltage. And and that's a real thing that can also happen with these cheap lights. Or you could may have hooked it up wrong, and now you
Now
got
you got to
something.
switch it around, and yeah,
Yeah.
but and shout out Papa Clutch for coming through.
Hey.
Another thing that I ran into, even on really expensive top tier lights, right? If you wire it wrong on 240, what will happen when you go to turn it off, and you won't notice this until you go to turn the light off, is that not only will some of them might slightly glow like you're talking about, but it might also flash like a strobe. Because if you wire the ground and the hot, you got a couple hots in the ground. If you wire it incorrectly and backwards, instead of that 120 phase only going through one side, it's going to go all the way back through, and you're going to have a cycle of it turning on and off, because
Yep.
you're riding that one AC level. So your lights might literally turn on and off like a strobe light. Don't freak out if that happens. Your lights aren't broken. Just make sure you turn off the power and address the wiring, because that somewhere you messed the polarity up.
Yeah. Now that's not something that you want to leave. Not only could that be a fire hazard, but that can also wear down your lights really
Mm-hmm.
quick. Just having any voltage going to them, you know, especially something that's like turning the lights on and off, on and off, and on and off. And correct me if I'm wrong, but LED lights, when they go on and off like that, they could short circuit real quick, right?
No, that's not actually too much of an issue. Like I said, like it's not going to really damage your light per se. It might be very unsettling, and if you're epileptic, it's not going to be great. And you definitely don't want that happening. But it's not going to really, really damage your light. Back in the day when we were using more HPS and uh, gas technology bulbs, if you turned them on and off that quickly, it could just blow the bulb. And that's why, like, some people still try to push HPS lights because they're cheap, and a lot of people like the results you get from them. But the fact of the matter is they didn't used to always be that cheap. When I got into growing, it was $1,200 for a single HPS light. So people complaining about a $1,200 LED light that's going to last them 10 years is kind of a fucking joke to me. But, that's my opinion. But the second problem with HPS lights is that if that were to happen where it turns on and off like that, you very well could blow bulbs. But even if you get skin oils on the bulb itself and you turn it on, it can explode. And I'm not talking just not work anymore. I'm talking explode, glass everywhere. So no matter what, I like to push LED technologies nowadays because there's just so many things that can go wrong with HPS technologies. And even, ceramic metal halide, great. Those are cheap, and even cheaper than HPS when it comes to electricity wise. But still, at the end of the day, you got to replace bulbs pretty much every grow if you want to maintain the level of photons that you're getting to your plants. And it creates more heat that you have to deal with in the summertime. It creates more infrared waves coming off the light, which makes the leaf temperature go up, which makes your VPD harder to control. So there's a lot of different differences when it comes to LED versus the HPS on that.
Now, what do you run your lights at? Now, I know you got army of lights, and you can adjust your dimness or your height or whatnot. Do you use a combination of? I know you got you're more of a fixed ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you adjust your light height, or do you adjust your light intensity, or do you do a combination of both?
Yeah, once I put up a light, it stays there and it never moves. And this is I like this method of growing where you put up the light, it never moves. And while the plants are really low and the light's all the way up here, you can run it a little bit higher on the dim to make sure more the photons are making it down to the plants. Once they start growing up a little bit, you can turn it down a little. Once they start getting a good base from growing up a little, you can start turning it back up again because they can accept more. So you can play that game there. Most of the time, though, I'm just running at 80 to 100% on all my lights all the time, and the plants are just further away.
Oh, okay.
Now, for a tent grower that uses one tent and a highly powerful light, that might not be the answer for you. That might be entirely too much light for your space. But I'm in a much larger open space. It does have some reflectivity on the walls, but most of the walls are just painted white. So it's not like we have a crazy amount of reflectivity in the room. But if you are growing in a tent, I don't know, I would recommend maybe keeping the light high. I definitely like that idea because it keeps the heat away from the plant. As well as, watching your plants and adjusting the dimming.
Now, if you're growing in a tent, this is what I recommend. If you're growing in a tent and you got just one light in there, right? I honestly, to save you money, would dim it down, right? Dim it down and lower your light a little bit. Right? You'll still get the same coverage and whatnot, but it'll be a little bit dimmer. You'll save a little bit of money, and you'll save the longevity of the light. Right? There's numerous times where people run their lights at full capacity, and along with running your lights at full capacity, you got the light or you got the heat. Now you got to evacuate or get the heat out of there, right? And this is just for tent growers. Goblin's a different story. He's in an open space. So he's got a lot of room for that light to, or that heat to dissipate. But if you're a home grower and you're growing in a tent, you can manipulate your power bill a little bit by influxing the light, raising the light up a little bit and dimming it and whatnot. Uh, at least, that's always been my experience. And
You
even
definitely
like
can.
professionally, there's been companies that I've had to go and service lights at where they're running these lights at full capacity. They don't have the option to dim them, right? They don't have dimmers put in, and they're old style lights where they're just the LEDs that kick on. And every X amount of years, you got to go back and replace those lights because of all the heat. And, the lights generally in a room are kept up high, so that heat gets to the LEDs and wears the lights down faster.
Indeed, it does. But I would like to also remind everyone, all these lights are engineered for that compared to these other lights. They have heat sinks on them. They've been tested in harsh conditions by overpowering them massively to cut down on their lifespan so they can measure, hey, this light will last 50,000 hours. There's a lot of testing that goes into these grow lights that make sure that even if you run it at 80 or 100%, it's going to last you 5-7 years.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So don't be afraid to run it at a higher capacity just because you don't want to buy another light. Because by the time 5 to 7 years comes down the line and you need another light, LEDs are going to be even cheaper. There's going to be other technologies. And at the end of the day, we hit the you can grow for super cheap years ago. It's just people always want to push the envelope and push the envelope and push the envelope. And that's definitely great for businesses that need to make more profit, have a little more meat on the bones because there's a lot of taxes.
Oh, fuck yeah.
But for the home grower, you literally, like, it's insane to me. You can literally go to AC Infinity's website and buy a tent kit for $1,000 or less if you use the fucking code. And it comes with everything. It comes with everything. Filter, fan, light, pots. The only thing it does not come with is soil and seeds.
But we all know how cheap it is to make our own soil organically, right? We saw that on my stream, and Goblin's been doing it for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So literally, you can grow for dirt cheap. When I started growing, I started like I was looking at all the big time streamers and all the dudes that have been in the game for a cool minute, and even talking to like some old heads. They were all pushing for like nutrients, right? Bottle nutrients, and bottle nutrients. So I naturally picked up bottle nutrients and started learning that shit. But now that I'm kind of like getting into it, I'm like, hey, organic is the way to grow. If you're a new grower, I'm telling you, man, go check it out. Check out some organics.
And like a lot of these methodologies that you see on different YouTube video streams and different things are great for commercial settings. And if I'm trying to make a bunch of money, even as the organic person, if I'm trying to make a bunch of money and I'm putting morals, ethics, and my ethos aside, I'm going to fill an entire warehouse with thousands and thousands of plants grown in Rockwell cubes, grown with salt nutrients, because I can kick that shit out every 8 weeks like clockwork and have thousands of really huge plants that throw off tons of biomass. And that's what the market's about right now. Biomass. It's not about quality. It's about how much do you have.
Yeah.
And I can grow 300,000 pounds in a fucking couple of months with that. And it's going to cost some money because you got to buy the nutrients, the irrigation system, and all this other stuff. But once you have that, it's going to be quite cheap because you're going to have zero labor costs, other than the fact you're going to have to pay some people to go defoliate once in a while.
Or trim.
So that's why there's seasonal work in this industry so often, to where, hey, I need some help for 2 weeks. I need some help for 3 weeks trimming. and you don't get any more work after that. And that's because everything's so commercialized and commoditized. And that's what I love about home grow or compassion clubs or caregivers, is that a lot of those practices aren't used because we're going for quality.
Yeah.
And not to say that the large corporations or large grows can't go for quality, but they have people to answer to. They have partners, they have board of directors, they have money peoples that they have to answer to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a sad thing because it's limiting a lot of people that use cannabis for medical purposes to only getting recreational weed. And recreational cannabis is great, and I'm super grateful for people to be able to have access to it. But we can't throw away the medical benefits that people have been using it for years, especially here in the state of Michigan, for medical purposes. And we had a different class of product then. It was just entirely different. And you can still get that, but you gotta find a caregiver. You gotta find a compassion club. You're not probably going to find that at a dispensary. And like, I was just having a discussion the other night. Even though the rec cannabis around here is hella cheap, you get a $50 ounce.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, sometimes you get a $30 ounce.
What the fuck?
But it's not great weed.
Yeah.
And even at those prices and the way that I smoke, I would not even be able to afford the shit weed. I smoke about a quarter a day of flower.
And that's just smoking. That's not edible.
And that's not edibles, and that's not anything else. And that's a quarter a day of my stuff, not the crappy $30 an ounce stuff. It'll still get you high, but you gotta smoke 3-4 joints instead of a joint. You gotta smoke a couple of blunts instead of a blunt. Like, it's still a product, and it's still usable. But like I said, for the people that use it medically, that need a little bit higher quality, that has the terpenes, that has the whole entourage effect, that you don't have to smoke a ton of it. Because at the end of the day, smoking anything isn't great for your lungs.
Nope.
And I'd rather have to smoke one joint and be able to save my lungs for another joint in the future than to have to smoke 10 joints now because I got a good deal on some weed.
Yeah, real shit.
Now, these are all choices that are personal choices that you got to make for yourself. And this is a big factor why I grow and why I started growing.
Yeah. Like, you always gotta weigh that out. Like, that was the same kind of thing with me. Like, I started growing because I was looking at the bill that I was paying every month for fucking how much I was spending on weed. And it was like, well, I'm not giving up weed, you know what I'm saying? Like, I lightweight need that shit. But at the same time, I'm not paying the dispo for, whatever the fuck they got. So I took that money and I fucking I made the grow. And yeah, granted, I haven't had the best harvest every time, but it's always been a good harvest to me because I didn't have to go to the dispo, right?
And it's going to get better every time too.
Yep.
And like a lot of people, people see how I grow now and think I've always been growing like that. And the fact of the matter is I've been working on this for 10, 13 years. Like, I learned something new every single year.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, just learned that fucking organic is the way to grow. I don't know if y'all knew that, but I'm gonna be preaching that shit till the day I die, man. Holy shit.
And I give big props to the people that grow with nutrient salts, only for the reason that you have to be so diligent and on point all the time in order to get the best results possible out of them. that I wouldn't want to have to do all that.
Nah. Hey, you know what's funny is like when I grew outdoors, I used Fox Farm nutrients, but I didn't use Fox Farm nutrients. You know what I'm saying? Like I was the lazy outdoor grower, right? But I still grew some fire. Like it still came out like some fucking awesome buds. That could have been genetics. That could have been the California sun. I don't know. But I tried to take that same method and put it indoors, right? And it's a completely different world. Like you growing indoor and you're using synthetic nutrients, you really got to be on top of your shit.
And it's
And
partly because, yeah, you were in the ground and the plant was able to take up nutrients from the ground as well as the nutrients you were giving it.
mm-hmm.
So you were more, that was more of a synganic approach.
So, yeah, I always wondered that. Like, so people use synthetic nutrients in an outdoor grow, like a in ground outdoor grow. That
Yeah.
always boggled my mind. Like most of the time, I'd be like, all right, well, I don't know. When I was growing outdoor, I did Fox Farm, but it was always like a once a month kind of feeding thing, right? I was lazy with it. I'm not gonna lie. Shit.
And I would prefer people to be like that because you really don't need to use a lot, especially when the plant's already in the ground. It's going to get nutrients from its surroundings already. And if you want to make sure it has everything, you know, give it a little something once a month, and you know things aren't going to build up that way.
Yeah.
But when you're feeding every watering, like a lot of people are told, it is inevitable that you will get salt buildup.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
like
yeah.
even organic people have to watch out for salt buildup. We're not immune to it just because we don't use nutrient salts. If you have hard water that has entirely too much minerals in it, eventually you are salting your medium. If you use hard water all the time. Now, the same goes for if you use reverse osmosis water all the time. That's not great for soil either.
So RO, you're just stripping everything out of there, right?
And that's why, like, unfortunately, because of the modern life we live nowadays, not a lot of people have direct access to spring water from a natural spring that you can use on your plants. That technically would be the best water. But since a lot of us are hooked up to city water and get water from wells that aren't necessarily the cleanest or have the right mineral content, you can, in my opinion, the best way to do it is RO the water. You can also disinfect it by using a UVC light. It's a special thing that you can run water through a pipe and there's a UV light in it, and it makes sure all viruses and pathogens are dead.
Oh shit.
And then I would remineralize it with a drops of balance or another product like that, so that it does contain the natural minerals that a spring water would have, but not too much, not too little. And that, in our modern society, that's probably about the best way you're going to get the best water for your plant. If you are going to get a water softener, make sure it's an ion exchange water softener. It uses the resin beads. That's going to not add sodium to your water and also soften it. There's water softeners that you have to get the Morton salt and you put in your water softener, and it will soften your water. Not great for plants though.
Okay. I got this water filter that I've been using. I don't know, I've been preaching this thing, but I had this issue. I remember I brought this up. I was like, yo, I got this filter and fucking, I go to pour a glass of water and it smells like fucking fish. Used to be the best tasting water ever. What happened? Well, come to find out, it's an ion exchange water filter. It's called the Zero water filter. And after the filter's done, like, it can't filter anything out anymore. it'll start smelling like fish. Right? I didn't notice. And I go to drink some water the other night, and I was like, Miss B, does this smell like fish? And she goes, yeah, it does a little. I'm like, ah, fuck, man. That was the last of the ice cubes.
And that's
So,
that's the sad thing too, is like it's super great that we have these water filters that work well. But the only reason that it smells like fish when it runs out is because we have to put specific chemicals in that filter that will attract the chemicals in our water so that we can actually filter it out. And once those chemical reactions get used up because it took all the chemicals out of the water, that's when the fish smell and taste comes, is because those chemicals, they can't do any more work to help you clean the water.
yeah. And you got to think, like, where does your water come from? Where's, what's the source? Well, there's fish in it. So obviously it's going to get fishy, But at the time I didn't think about it, and I was like, bro, something's wrong with my water filter. Yeah, that's a
But
trip, bro.
swing it back a little bit to the 240 conversation and switching up your electronics. Like always, have a licensed electrician at least take a look at your work. Hey, shout out to Leo for the raid.
Hey.
But keep in mind that if you have a bit smaller grow, 1/2, it's not entirely necessary to switch to 240. If you're more of a hobbyist, caregiver type grower, there you have quite a few lights. To switching to 240 will definitely help load balance out your electricity and potentially save you some money. You're not going to save a ton of money, but if you do get your loads under 80%, balance the loads out correctly, you possibly could save a few dollars for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out for
And
the follow, Mandry.
hell yeah. Hell yeah. And yeah, always check with an electrician before you touch anything. And look, whether you got just one light and a fan and a circulating fan in there, or you got some big setup, whatever you got, I highly recommend that you get some way to check your voltage and your wattage, like a watt meter or something, just so you know where you're standing at. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be an avid, like, get into the whole electrician thing, but always know what your numbers are.
Yeah, definitely a huge thing. Like, they're 25 bucks. Get one of those kilowatt meters. And like I said, don't leave the device plugged into it, but use it for a measurement tool. Plug it in, measure the device, let it run for 30 minutes to let the device equalize, and take your readings, write them down, unplug the device, measure your next device.
Yeah.
And that way you can have a list of all of your devices that are in your garden. I mean, you can do this to your whole home if you want, but you can do all the devices in your garden, how much wattage they're using, how many amperage they're using, and what circuits they're on. Trust me, if you take the time to take these measurements and write down this information, it will save you headaches in the future. Because if something happens to where a circuit isn't working the way it was, or whatnot, you can go to your list and be like, hey, these fans are on this circuit, and I'm using this much power with these fans. This shouldn't be happening. And you have more information to be able to diagnose the problem, because more often than not, trying to diagnose an electrical issue is a kind of a nightmare, because there's so many different points that you need to check. So the more information that you can have written down and in your records will give you a really great benefit to diagnosing or preventing anything that could go wrong electrical wise.
Especially if you're in an apartment building, you're definitely on a shared circuit with a whole bunch of other people. right? And even if you have like an older house with older wiring, that's also another like hot topic. Wiring, right? If you got older wires in the house and it's an older wiring system, you definitely want to know what you got going on.
Hmm.
Because older wires were not
Aluminum,
designed for
older
grows.
aluminum wires. Yeah, you're gonna not do great with that.
Yeah. So you're definitely gonna, always know your numbers. Don't always, and you're if you're confused or you don't know how to check like what your system is, your outlet will tell you. So just looking at the face of your outlet, you know how it's got like, it's got the big eye, the little eye, and then the mouth. Oh, it's like sitting there like,
Hmm.
oh, right. That's a 15 amp 120 volt circuit. That's what that receptacle tells me, because you got a hot and your neutral is standing up, right? And your neutral is your bigger wire and your hot is your smaller one, right? And then your middle one is your ground, right? So that's what that one tells me. Now, if you just so happen to have a receptacle that has the same build or the same look, but in the neutral, I believe it's the neutral, it's got a slit that goes off to the side of the eye, right? Kind of looks like a T. That's telling me that you have a 20 volt or a 20 amp 120 volt circuit. And so you can check online what your receptacles look like, and you can match that up with the amperage and the voltage that that circuit is running. Now, that isn't always 100% honest. I'm gonna be 100% real with y'all. There are some people who think that a even though you take a 15 amp off that type B, if you take that type B one off and you replace it with a, do they have a 240 or a 100? Go over to the left. No, they don't have it. So if they have the right, so if you take type B and you put a little slit on it coming off of the left side of the big terminal, right? That's telling me that you got a 20 amp, right? Now, if you there's some people, who think that when you take a regular 15 amp receptacle off and replace it with a 20 amp receptacle off, replace it with a 20 amp receptacle, that magically somehow
It can
that
do 20
circuit
amps.
can now handle 20 amps. That is not true. Okay, it's all in the wiring. Now,
It's in the wiring and the breaker.
yeah, as an electrician, when we go and install all these in your house, when it's being built, the receptacles that we put in coordinate with the wire that we install, right? So for a 15 amp circuit, I'm only going to put that type B receptacle in,
Hmm.
because that's telling the user, hey, this is only a 15 amp circuit. You can only plug in so much, right? In a 20 amp circuit, all my whole grow is ran on, uh, it's all got 20 amps, 20 amp circuit, right? And it's that one with the slit. Now, my 240 volt lights, uh, we're not gonna get into that. I didn't really change my shit, but it's the same thing, right? Two hots in a neutral, or two hots in the ground. You know what
I
I'm saying?
changed mine.
But I did not. Always change it. I labeled them, so and I'm the only one that goes in there. So you got a lantern that goes in there, and what I'm saying, he might not get the gist of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you
One
can
day he might plug
accidentally plug
something
the
in.
120 into a 240 thing, it's gonna spark, and it's not gonna be fun.
Yeah, he'll shut the shit out real quick. Um, so don't do as I do. Do as Goblin does and switch your shit over if you do end up switching over to 240 volts. But like I said, switching from into 240 from 120 will save you in your amperage. Um, it's gonna make you think that, hey, my power bill is gonna get lower. I could plug more in, but look, don't plug more in, wait till you get that first bill, see where you're sitting at, and then go from there.
100%. Because there's two ways you can think about it. Hey, I'm going to save some money, or I'm going to add more things. And usually as a grower, you just add more things. Because you're the main reason a grower even switches to 240, especially in the home situation, is because they outgrew all the circuits they currently have in their house. And that's what happened here. Like,
Yep.
this is it's not a crazy large house. It's like a 1,200 square foot house. We got a garage, and there's a welder in the garage. We use electricity everywhere in the house. All right, electric dryer, fucking electric stove, all that kind of shit. So you can easily hit a wall home growing, especially if you're trying to, have an entire basement full, or an entire garage full. You can definitely hit a limit, and that's when switching to 240 is a really great idea. And like, for instance, your electric dryer probably already is on 240. Your electric stove probably already is on 240.
Yep.
So these high amperage, high usage devices, they benefit extremely from being on 240.
Yeah.
Now, as a little offshoot, Beat, maybe you understand this. Why aren't refrigerators on 240?
Because there's a lot of electrical components. I don't know, bro.
Like, I don't
There's a
get
lot
that.
of
Like,
electrical. They got compressors and all sorts of shit. But yeah, I figure it would be more efficient to run a refrigerator off of 240.
and everybody's got a refrigerator. Like, I can't say that. A majority of
Most
people have
people.
refrigerator, and like, if you're building especially new construction and stuff, I don't understand why the spot for the refrigerator doesn't have a 240 receptacle. Like, and refrigerators aren't made for 240. Like, you can get them made that way, but it's not a standard.
No, it's not. And I fucking wonder about that too. I wonder if anybody's across the pond, your guys is pre-wired already at 240, right? So I wonder if you were to buy a refrigerator off of the internet from across the pond, have it shipped here. I wonder. I'm
Oh
saying
yeah,
they
you
got it.
could. And like, that's what I said. Like, the rest of pretty much the entire rest of the world has pretty much all devices run on 240, except us.
Yeah, I've always wondered that myself, because
Us in
just like
Canada.
switching the lights over, your amperage goes down, and you can plug a lot more shit in. Maybe that's the problem. They're like, oh, America, they want more shit plugged in. Let's not give them the opportunity to do that. Or the insurance companies were like, yeah, let's put them at a limit, give them 120, and we'll see how much they can plug in before they burn it down, and we'll cash the fuck in.
Yeah, honestly, I don't understand that part at all. Like, and like, a lot of the other world also uses, this is going to get pretty in depth, uses 50 hertz versus 60 hertz, which is an entirely different thing too.
Yeah.
And like, there's been some studies showing that using 50 hertz electricity is better for the environment.
Oh. Now, if y'all don't, in case y'all don't know what a hertz is, hertz is a level of measurement, and your electrical system vibrates. It's basically a measurement of vibration, right? And your electricity is vibrating at 60 hertz. Now, a hertz is every time. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's one sine wave, right? One complete up and down, and that's so.
It does at
if you guys,
60.
if you've ever seen a sine wave in like some sci-fi movie or some shit, how they got like it's like a little glass panel and there's a whole bunch of squiggly lines going across it. It's measuring a sine wave, and a sine wave is basically your measurement of how much how fast it's vibrating, right? So across the pond and in a couple other places, they run at 50 hertz. Out here in America, we all our electronics run at 60 hertz, right? So uh, the reason for that, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I'm at a loss on that one as well. But
Well, 60 hertz, technically, the hertz that, from what I understand, is when it comes to AC electrical systems, you can push electricity further with 60 hertz. So you need less transformer stations.
oh, okay.
And with 50 hertz, it doesn't go nearly as far down the line, so you need a little more transformer stations, but it doesn't leak electricity out of its wires nearly as much as a 60 hertz. And there's been some studies showing that plants can, especially plants and trees around power lines, can tell the difference between 50 and 60 hertz, and uh, they grow better when they're not inhibited by the 60 hertz.
Oh. Oh, that's
Now, for
true.
us in the North America, United States, and Canada, everything's 60 hertz. And I know people are going to question, is that slowing down the growth of my plants in my indoor garden here in North America? And the answer is maybe.
Oh.
These studies are very new. They're not concrete, and there's a lot more that needs to be looked into. But if that is making your plants grow slower, it's making it grow so much slower that you can't even notice. Like, and that's another kind of topic I wanted to hit before we ended out today, is a lot of people see all these things that you can do to get 1 or 2% more production in your garden or better production in your garden. And that's fine if you want to chase those 1 or 2%. But I really, really, really would like, especially a lot of the new growers out here, concentrate on the first 80%. That's where all the harvest is going to come in for you. Now, if you want to, after you got that first 80% down pat, and you can always nail that 80% every single time, start going for that 1 to 2% increase. Because in all reality, those 1 to 2% increases aren't worth a whole lot. For instance, if you have to spend $1,500 extra per year to get another 1% better harvest, is that worth it for the home grower? Absolutely not. They're going to get 10 more grams. That $1,500 was a waste. For a commercial person, they're going to get 100,000 more grams off that 1%. And it's worth it to them to spend that $1,500. And I want people to constantly do that calculation in their head when they're doing home grow, because you can spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a 10-foot by 10-foot grow room. And that's fine if you want to do that. Make sure you have the money and you're not sacrificing shit from your family and that's that the other thing. If you got the money to do it, do it.
Oh, yeah.
But really keep those calculations in mind, because the little bit of 50 hertz versus 60 hertz, or if I add CO2 to this 2 foot by 2 foot area that's not really pushing that much to begin with, like doing a lot of these 1 to 2% activities aren't as fruitful for the home grower as they think. So constantly always do the cost benefit analysis, because CO2 systems, a couple $100, especially you want a regulator and a tank and make sure everything's correct. And so you're not overdoing CO2, because that's harmful to people. Is that really going to help you for the couple of months that you need it? Maybe. Like, I grow 48 plants throughout my entire space. I would not yet ever supplemented CO2.
Yeah, I've never used it either.
And I grow a ton of plants. As long as you have proper airflow and fresh air intake, you do not need CO2.
No.
You don't need fancy UV lights. You don't need fancy infrared lights. You literally a decent light, some decent soil, and not poisonous water will get you very, very far.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. You don't need, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need the most expensive light out there. There's cheaper lights. Like, you know, when I was watching, people were like, "Oh yeah, this cheap $700 light," and at the time, I'm looking at my pockets like, "What do you mean cheap $700 light?" So there's lights out there that are cheaper, more on the less expensive side, that are decent. These PB4000 Pros, I think they were like 250 a pop, something like that, 300 a pop. So.
And like I said, to me, it's absolutely insane because, like I said, I had to spend $1,200 on my first light, and it wasn't an LED.
Yeah.
And now you go to Medic Grow, you use a code to get it even further. But even without the code, you can get a light that covers a 4 foot by 4 foot tent for fucking $400 or $500.
Yeah.
You use the code, it's fucking $450, $350 for a light that covers a 4x4 with LED high energy photon.
And if you do
like,
the
it's
math,
insane.
you spend more of that in weed.
And that light's gonna last you 5 years. So if you do that math, you go 500 divided by 5. That's $100 a year you spent on a light. $100 a year.
All in.
It's like a few dollars a month.
Yeah. Nice shit.
My Grow arrays a good light as well, especially if you're across the pond. Shipping's a little heavy if you're trying to get My Grow over here right now, but I know Shane's working on that.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Hey, what up, Craze?
Hey, what's going on, sis? In case y'all don't know, tonight we got the pregame episode with Craze. Before we head over there and hashtag TTBTOWB. I'm sorry, excuse me. I mean the rolling tray with Trey Strongs.
Hell yeah, Guts. See, look at, I knew Shane was working on it. Shipping's already better now.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, like not only that, like, always use your favorite creator's code because it's going to save you money. 1. 2, it's absolutely insane. You can, like, I've had nearly every light company hit me up now.
Oh no shit.
Nearly every light company.
Nice.
I've used a light from nearly every light company except Chilled. Granted, I've used the Chilled light through CLTV. That, you know, they got the light, but I've nearly seen or used every single light on the market. And you can get a really, really great cheaper light from Medic Grow. And personally, Mars are great lights. Spider Farmers are great lights. But personally, I like Medic Grow the best because technically Spider Farmer and Mars and whatnot are buying from Medic Grow and reselling you the light.
And y'all see this? Look, Goblin's not even sponsored by him, and he's still advertising it. Yo, that's how you know it's a good product.
Like, Medic Grow sponsored me a while back. I do still use their lights, but at the end of the day, they have the best value for money when it comes to a light. Second best, AC Infinity.
Oh.
AC Infinity just came out with bar lights. They also have quantum board lights. Like I said, you can get an entire kit from them now that has literally everything you need to start growing except seeds and soil for $1,000. It's insane. Now, if you want to go for Cadillac lights, Photontek lighting, Cadillac. The engineering on that thing's crazy. I can walk up to a photon light right now while it's on and just pull a bar down off the light. The bar will just turn off. Nothing will break. It'll be completely fine. And I can just shove that bar right back.
Oh, shit.
Like, the amount of dust-proof, waterproof engineering that went into those lights are insane.
Oh, shit.
You're going to pay a little bit of money for that engineering. But it's insane. So, like, even on the LED front, you got lights all the way from $100, $200 up to $1,200, and every single one of them are value. It's insane. Like, there is no better time to start growing at home than right now.
Yeah.
And, like, it kind of hurts my heart a little bit because people are seeing these cheap prices at dispos, and it's discouraging them from growing their own. Because, why am I going to spend $1,000 on a setup and try to grow my own that I might not get when I can spend $30 for an ounce?
And that's the whole thing, bro.
I see that, but they're not taking into account return on investment. And a lot of people have a hard time seeing return on investment because they want to buy something and then a week later see that return. That's not how it works in growing. Whether you're growing medicinals or food, it takes several months to get that product done before you reap the benefits and get a reward on investment. And even I can, even not doing extremely great in a 4x4 tent, you're going to get a couple ounces per plant. And if you do 4 plants, that's 6 ounces, 8 ounces from the first grow. All right. And even if you're going, okay, I don't like buying the $30 ounces because they're not great. I buy the $80 ounces because those are better. Even at 5 ounces times $80, that's half the amount of money that you put into your grow. You already made half the money back the first time you grew. And that's what the least amount of results you could possibly get. More often than not, you're probably going to get 3 to 4 ounces per plant.
And honestly, it was a successful grow because not only did you get some smokable bud out of it, but you also learned some shit. So the next time that you go and grow and drop some seeds in there, and you're like, okay, well, this is what I did last time. I got these results. Now I'm going to try something else. I'm going to add something to it. I'm going to put a little spin on it, and bam. Now you turn that 4 ounces into 5 ounces this harvest. All right? It's already paid itself off.
Yeah, literally, even a novice grower can get, $1,000 to $1,200 worth of equipment and have that repaid back in bud in 2 grows. In the first year, you get all your money back, guaranteed, first year. Even with crazy low weed prices. And I understand, a decent lamp or light is expensive, and having a setup, can be expensive, especially when you're starting from nothing. But keep in mind, you probably spent $1,000 on your television. You probably spent $1,000 on your computer. Probably spent $1,000 on the remote control cars that you like to race around. You probably spent $1,000 on a go-kart. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of things you can spend $1,000 on, and pretty much anything you want to get into, any hobby you want to get into, it's going to cost around $1,000. The only difference is when you get into the growing hobby, this one can actually pay you back. Yeah. When you buy that remote control car, you ain't getting that $1,000 back. When you buy that go-kart, you ain't getting that $1,000 back. You might be able to resell it for a few $100s after you used it, but you ain't getting all your money back.
Nope. Nope. That's for sure.
I feel that spike, especially the carbon things.
The filters?
The carbon filters can get expensive, especially if you replace them on time every 6 months and you're buying good ones. It can get very expensive with the carbon filters. You know what I said to that? You're going to smell
Hold
my
on.
weed.
Hold on, wait. Time out. I gotta flag on the play here. Flag on the play. Did you just say you gotta replace your air filters every 6 months?
Depending on how large of a space you have and how many plants you're growing and the temperature and humidity in your area, every 6 months a carbon filter could be replaced.
All right, so check it out. My 4-inch air filter, my 4-inch AC Infinity, I've had that since day one. You know, since I started, like, that was my first, like, real big investment for the grow box was this AC Infinity fan. And it was just 4-inch, and I was juiced about it, right? This was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, so
I
shit
mean,
like that.
the fan's still good,
Yeah, the fan's still good.
but the filter.
Yeah, the filter. I've always just washed my pre-filter and then just threw it back on. But is there a way? So like me, I'm a cheap bastard, bro. My pockets are tight as fuck. I ain't gonna lie. Um, is there a way that you can take? Because I feel guilty too, just taking this air filter and chucking it. Right?
There are some that you can take apart easily and refill with new carbon. Now, you're not going to get the carbon packed in there as well as they do at the factory. So you'll lose some efficiency from the filter, but it'll still work. Technically, you can wash it, and that will help a little, like with just water. But the real way, if you want to really reinvigorate an old carbon filter, is you have to put it in a high pressure steam environment. You have to run steam through it in a high pressure scenario. And that will reactivate the carbon in the carbon filter. And that's how activated carbon's made, is running hot ass steam with pressure through carbon.
You know, it would be legit, right? So we got all these big time, streamers that have AC Infinity hookups. I don't know. You have an AC Infinity relationship? You should bring this up to them, bro. Be like, look, you know how much money you guys can make recycling air filters? Like, people think that, well, this thing's done. Now I got to throw this out and get a new one. Like if they had like a buyback program where like, hey, send us your used air filter. We'll send you one back at like half price or some shit. Right? You know how much money that would make? Telling you, hey,
Quite a bit.
you want to move up in that AC Infinity thing, bro? You should take that to him.
But I guess the main thing would be is if you're in an area where you need to make sure that you don't have smell, definitely, that's a cost.
Yeah.
If you're in an area where it doesn't really matter, maybe question yourself, do I really even need the filter?
Yeah. So me living where I'm at, it already smells like weed. You know what I'm saying? All the homies around here, they walk around smoking blunts and whatnot. So, me growing, it just kind of like blends into the environment. I always thought of an air filter as more of like a way to save the fan. Right? So if your fan is sucking up all this crap, then you're definitely going to have to worry about cleaning that thing a lot more. So even though my filters are fucking way past their due date, just keeping them on there will save the longevity of your fan. Keep you from having to clean it.
And that's why I buy the $25 air intake filter that you can clean underwater and put that on there instead of the carbon filter that costs $100. But
yeah, check this out. Look, so in my boxes, right? In my boxes, I made, the whole box is fucking custom made. So I had to figure out a way to make an air filter that would allow air to pass through into the box as it's being pulled by the intake fan or the exhaust fans, right? But at the same time, I wanted to filter out the shit that was just in the air, statically in the air. Right? So I made a 4-inch. Basically, it's a 4-inch coupling that I cut in half, a duck coupling, right? And I put some nylon or some pantyhose on it, right?
That
Now
works.
look, this is just from running for 6 weeks, give or take, and
Yo,
that's with
that
the
dude Timo with
fucking
the raid. Let's go.
hey, what's going on? Right. So if y'all see that, look, this is the side that didn't have it, right? That's the regular side. This is the intake side. This is what's being pulled from the outside. Right. So if you just have your AC Infinity fan or whatever intake fan you have without a filter on it, definitely check, because if your fan is dirty, it's going to be pulling more power just to keep up with the RPMs that it's set to run at, right? And yeah, those are cool too. And that's basically where I got the idea from. I went down to Home Depot, fucking, there was a
Shout
duck
out for the 100
coupling,
biddies, pops.
and it basically just looks like that. And you could get those for tents and put them in the intake hole, and it'll filter your incoming air. I got to get a few of those.
Mm-hmm. I like
But
those,
yeah,
and then let me find the other one. Apparently, it's not in my history anymore. But
uh-oh.
there's another one I like.
Pantyhose for
It's
ducks.
Mhm. Shout out that dude Timo for the raid. Shout out for the follow.
Hell yeah.
Now, technically, these filters I'm uh, pulling up are for uh, they're technically for cars and trucks, but I like to use these as my intake. They're about 25 a piece. They fit on a 6-inch fan, and
Oh,
these are washable.
Goblin. Goblin, bro, you just blew my fucking mind. I didn't even think about that. I'm like, look, Goblin's over here souping his shit up, like putting aftermarket air filters on this shit, but I didn't even think about that. Yo, these things are designed to go on 6-inch pipes. Oh, bro, I didn't even think about that.
Red Pill called it out before I even pulled it up.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, so a car filter, if you're not worried about the smell, right? These things don't filter out the smell,
No,
but
no.
they do filter out all the crap that's in
Dust,
your air.
everything else, yeah.
So you wouldn't, if you're not worried about the smell, you could strap one of those on there, save yourself some space, maybe put your circulating fan a little bit higher. Damn, that's genius, bro. I didn't even fucking think about that.
They
See,
do
see what I
have
mean?
8-inch ones.
You see what I mean? Look, every time I talk to Goblin, every time he always throws some shit at me, and now I'm like, damn, now I gotta rethink some shit.
And yeah, there's no light leak because it's several layers of filter there, and there's no light leak.
Damn, blew my mind. Ah, Goblin, bro, I'm about to order one of those.
Yeah, they're nice. Even like I said, you're not, if you're using it for an intake to your tent and you still have your carbon filter out, it'll prevent anything from dust and pests and whatnot from getting in the tent. I have it for my intake fan because I have fresh air intake for the whole basement. Right, I have one on my intake fan. If I didn't have one on my intake fan, I would have issues
Bugs
with
and all
pests
fucking
and
shit.
all kinds of stuff because it's just gonna blow the shit in.
Yeah, damn, I didn't even think about that, yo. Man, I'm about to go down to AutoZone and be like, look, I need a whole pallet of these, bro.
And that's why I like them too, is because they're washable. I don't like buying stuff that I have to throw away.
Yeah.
And as kind of the ethos of a natural farmer, if I have to buy something that I have to throw away, that's probably not the product that I want.
And
And
that was my whole issue with the air filters. After a certain time, unless you know how to rejuvenate the carbon that's in there or the charcoal that's in there, then basically you just have to throw it out. And it's like, well, one, I'm not concerned about the smell, and two, I don't like to throw shit out, right? So that air filter is fucking genius. Damn, you got one. That's so yeah. If you guys aren't worried about the smell, that's definitely a good route to go down. That'll save you from a little DIY thing, like me, you know. Say DIY, and I'm getting down.
Well, and that's the thing
But
too. Like that's technically still DIY. You're buying a part and using it for off-label use. I mean, that's pretty much a DIY project right there.
very true, very true.
We got about 50 seconds or so before we got a 420 coming up. So I'm gonna pack something up.
Hell yeah! I had that joint. And I smoked through that motherfucker.
Oh, it was about it's $23.99 on Amazon for the air filter right now.
Hell
Now,
yeah!
if you're in Canada, apparently it's going to be $45.99 because of Amazon and Canada and this, that, the other thing. But
And you could buy these things in all sorts of different colors to match your grow environment. And you know,
mhm.
if you like
They got
lime green, you could get a lime green one, throw it up in there. Just don't ever put stickers on the air filter.
yeah, limit the flow. You don't want to do that.
I see these growers. None. I'm not. If you do this, by all means, that you know that's dope as shit. But I see all these growers where they put hella stickers on the inside of the tent, like on the mylar shit.
Hmm.
And I'm always like, bro, you're defeating the purpose there. Like the mylar is there to reflect. Right? You put the stickers on top of it, and now the stickers are absorbing that light, right? Like, don't get me wrong, you know me, I love me some slaps, but there's a time and a place.
Yeah, there is. Cheers, one love. Cybertane, she has straight up dill terps.
Oh my god, dude, the way this shit smells is fucking phenomenal. The only time that I've ever had weed that smells good as this shit does, is when I grew outdoor. That shit was fire. But now growing indoor, now that I've growing in synthetic indoor and trying to move my outdoor techniques indoor, I wasn't getting the results that I was hoping. Yeah, I got some cool weed, but that was me saying it was cool weed because I didn't have to go to the fucking dispo. Right? Anything that I grow is gonna be fired compared to me having to go to the dispo, and it should be the same for you, right? Because no matter what in your grow, whether you're growing weed or tomatoes or apples or whatever, if you get a harvest that saves you from having to go to the dispo or fucking rely on somebody for X amount of time, you already did yourself a favor, right? And not only that, you learn, right? So it gave you the techniques to progress on the next time you grow.
Absolutely. And an informed customer, even when they go to the dispo, is a better customer because you can hold the dispo, the grow house, and everybody more accountable and be like, hey, this is shit. What are you doing? Or or compliment them when they're doing something well, because like giving these companies shit can be gratifying and this, that, the other thing, but praise them when they do something right, because that's when they're going to continue to do that something right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like look, they get a million complaints a day. They have a whole line on the telephone that's come on words, that's dedicated to complaints, right? You know how often it is that a company gets uh
a compliment or an
a
accolade.
compliment. Yeah, like it's not that often, and when they do, they really take that shit to heart, right? Because it's even though it is a business, it's still somebody's baby that they fucking raised from a little tiny idea. They grew into this big ass company, right? So that's still something to somebody. and having a compliment every once in a while is fucking way better than, having to go through this damn complaint phone line.
Mm-hmm. Now, don't give them out for free, but when they do something right, definitely compliment them.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that, Red Pill. They need to not focus entirely on THC levels and more about the terpenes, flavonoids,
I
like
think
a quality product overall.
dead ass. I think they lie.
Lullaby.
They straight up lie on those fucking numbers, bro. They, 33%. There's some companies that are like advertising 33, 34% THC, and you're telling me that a third of your whole plant is THC? Nah, bro, you're tripping. You're smoking balls.
And that's the thing too, is they definitely cook the books for prices, Drusilla, but also the whole THC thing, it's total Capricorn ways, absolutely. It's they test both active and inactive THC and they add those numbers together, and then now they have 30, 35%, 40% strains. Like, it's not actually 30% THC. It's not actually 35% THC. Like, they moved the goalpost, so now it seems like it's a better thing.
Yeah.
And yes, THC levels have gone up over the years, where we've been selectively breeding for higher THC strains and gotten better at growing and all kinds of things. But I would, if people have the funds to do this experiment, I'd like, and the access to do this experiment, I'd like them to get a half a gram of THC diamonds and a half a gram of live rosin. Take a dab of just the diamonds one day and take a dab of the live rosin the other day, and tell me which one you like better. The diamonds are great, and you're going to get blasted. You'll be blasted for like 20, 30 minutes, and it's going to go away pretty quick because there's no other cannabinoids to help antagonize the THC in your blood. So it's just going to enter and exit very quickly.
Yeah. It's like, it relies on multiple things, right? It's not just the THC, right? It's not just the trichomes. It's the whole, you get the whole trifecta. You ever smoked a joint or a bowl and then go to smoking like a dab or something like that? It's a completely different high, not just because, yeah, one's fucking obviously got way more THC in it, but like, I don't know. That's why I like smoking joints and shit. And like papers and blunts is the high is completely different. I feel like I'm chasing it when I'm fucking doing dabs and shit like that.
Mm-hmm. And I love the taste of dabs. And I'll dab to my heart's content. But I can't give up flour. I just can't.
Fucking guts.
Nah, diamonds aren't for it. I mean, if you would just want to buy a THC diamond and set it on the shelf, it'll sit there and last forever.
Yeah. Hell yeah. All right, so I got to get up out of here. Snatch these kids up off Miss B's hands.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Appreciate you for this talk, y'all. Hey, in case you don't know, tonight we got tune into Craze, man. Tune into Craze. We got the pregame episode before we raid over to Trey. Hashtag TTBTOWB. I'm kidding. It's not Trey. Or it's not hashtag T. It's the Rolling Trey. But tune in tonight, y'all. Again, tomorrow, tune in. Me and Goblin are going to get into some organic garden talk if you're still down with that.
Hell yeah.
In case y'all didn't know, poor Goblin's, man, he's going to get his teeth worked on. So we're trying to get in as many streams as we can, build up all this content for him.
So, right, get a few episodes in.
Yep. Hell yeah. But hell yeah, I appreciate y'all, man. I got to dip up out of here. I hope y'all have a great day. Don't forget, man, wear those smiles on your face and don't take no shit from nobody. Appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later, man. Peace out, y'all.
Later.